to our first guest right away, and that is the aforementioned Stuart Mills, a Republican candidate out of the 8th Congressional District. First of all, Stuart, welcome to the Northern Alliance Radio Network. How are you today, sir?
Very good, Brad. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on The Patriot.
Great to have you on. While we have you for this short time, Stuart, we want to get into some of the issues. You had an opportunity to have a candidate forum this past week. Incumbent Congressman Rick Nolan, of course, part of that forum, as well as the Green candidate. Talk a little bit about that interaction. Was that the first of all, Stuart, was that the first opportunity you had to go face-to-face with Congressman Nolan in a forum like that?
Well, in a forum like that, yeah, that was our first time we've had to debate the issues. I've known Rick personally for years, but to have the ability to sit down and discuss the issues one by one, the fact that Rick Nolan loves Obamacare and thinks it's a great first step to government-run single-payer health care, the fact that he's F-rated by the National Rifle Association and he's more than earned that failing grade, the fact that he actually voted for a carbon tax, an energy tax that would completely devastate our part of Minnesota. He voted to finalize the Waters of the U.S. rule, which, again, we have a lot of agriculture up here in our part of Minnesota, and to have the EPA to be able to regulate every pond, drain tile, ditch, I mean, that's way over the top, especially since the folks in our ag community are great stewards of their land. I mean, this land has been in their families for generations. And also the fact that he voted against Keystone, the Keystone Pipeline, and he opposes the Enbridge Sandpiper Pipeline. So it was a great forum for us to be able to get our message out, what we stand for, what Rick Nolan stands for, and get the endorsement of the Duluth News-Tribune. It was a great day.
Indeed it was, and that, yeah, a very high-profile endorsement. I'm glad you brought that up. That, and the week before that, the Brainerd Dispatch also endorsed your campaign. So you have to be thrilled that in the 16 months or so that you've been campaigning, Stuart Mills, you're starting to get some accolades and some well-earned endorsements. So I know the big prize is still a little over 3 weeks away. There's still a lot of work to be done, but certainly you have to be pleased that your work is being acknowledged from that standpoint.
Oh, and you're right. We have worked. We've worked hard. But you know what? Our message really embodies the values, the priorities, and really the spirit of our part of Minnesota. So you know what? Rick Nolan does not speak for us here in our part of Minnesota. He has taken the vote that we have given him. He's taken it to Congress, and he's abused it.
I wanted to get to one of the issues you addressed in this particular candidate forum. Something that's still an issue on the table is the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare. Now, you specifically, Stuart Mills, have had some plans. I mean, we hear a lot of the conservative Republican candidates talk about repealing Obamacare, and there's never a whole lot of specifics on the replacement, if indeed there's a replacement at all. But you've kind of been touting a replacement and what you would put into a possible replacement for Obamacare should you be elected to Congress. Why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Well, let me back up a little bit. My family owns and operates Mills Fleet Farm. My dad and my uncle started it in 1955. Mm-hmm. I'm vice president, and my job is looking out for our employees. One of the hats I wear in that regards is plan administrator of our company's self-insured health plan. Yes. I've been doing that for 14 years, so I've spent my time in the industry. Now, I want to say that I'm against the Affordable Care Act, but I'm for the goals of the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
So to bring down cost and increase access, it's the exact opposite of what the Affordable Care Act, what Obamacare does. Mm-hmm. But it's what they told us that we were going to be able to do. Everybody was going to save $2,500. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Well, those are all lies. But to be able to make sure that people don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions, to make sure they don't have to worry about lifetime maximums or catastrophic health events, are worthy goals. But there are so much better ways to achieve those goals. Now, you see, I look at America as a land of good, solid social safety nets and the free market, free enterprise on top of those good, solid social safety nets. Rick Nolan, he likes the idea of government-run single-payer health care. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the welfare state.
Right.
And a government big enough to give us everything is also big enough to take it away.
Right.
So on top of the social safety nets, such as a high-risk pool, Minnesota had one until the end of this year where it which it's going to be canceled directly due to Obamacare, which was MSHA, Minnesota Comprehensive Health Association.
Yep.
Was it perfect? No, but we could have improved upon that. However, once you establish the legal protections such as MSHA or, legal protections such as HIPAA or social safety nets such as MSHA, you have to let the free market go to work to bring medical inflation in line with the rest of the economy. And in order to do that, you have the free market, buying and selling insurance across state lines, tort reform, price transparency, and larger utilization of health savings accounts. Because right now when we go into the doctor's office, it's the government, it's the insurance companies, it's you and your doctor. It should be between you and your doctor, and for non-life-threatening conditions, you should know the price of those services, and it should be your money through our health savings accounts that you're spending that on. And so, you know what, there are ways that we can achieve the goals of the Affordable Care Act without, again, sky-high premiums, higher copays, higher deductibles, skinnier networks. We're paying a lot more and we're getting a lot less.
One of the things we heard quite a bit during the 2012 election cycle was that Republicans need to get the White House in control of the Senate in order to repeal Obamacare, because by the time it gets to 2014, when a lot of the major provisions kick in, it's going to be a bureaucratic nightmare, and there's no way we're going to be able to untangle all that. Well, Stuart Mills, we're in 2014. Do you foresee a way we can untangle that people described as a bureaucratic nightmare? These are great ideas you have, but is there any way to turn back from Obamacare? Obviously, you think so.
Well, yeah, whatever cannot continue will not continue, and something is going to need to be done. And I would love to have the opportunity to have a seat at the table, to be able to put my idea forward, my ideas, plural, forward,
right,
to form small groups, then for those small groups to be larger groups, and for these ideas to be legislation. Because Congress, it's not about who's the best debater or who's the best on TV interviews. It's about relationships. So what I want to do in Congress is go and forge those relationships, both sides of the aisles, put my ideas on the table, and to be able to have the ideas that actually work snowball. And that's what's going to make America great again. Having somebody that's willing to stick their neck out, put their ideas on the table, and to be able to generate those small groups that become much larger groups that actually result in results for the American people.
I know one of the other major issues you've talked about is reforming our current tax system, our tax code, and because you've talked about tax reform, somehow the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has turned that into you oppose tax cuts for 95% of Minnesotans. Clarify your position on that, Stuart Mills, would you please?
Well, me opposing tax cuts is absolutely ludicrous. They are playing very fast and very loose with the truth.
Yep.
Certainly I oppose stimulus. The stimulus we had before, it was just sugar-high fiscal economic policy. For example, we took $28 billion and turned the Department of Energy into a venture capital firm, resulting in about $11 billion worth of bankruptcies, Solyndra, Fiskars, Tesla. The list absolutely goes on. So, no, I opposed bad fiscal policies, but I certainly do not oppose tax reform. And for the Democrats to say that I oppose tax cuts for the majority of Minnesotans is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, and I appreciate you clarifying that, because that seems to be the one ad that they're touting. They don't seem to have a whole lot of other things to go on. Another issue that's really facing Congress, and one that's gotten an equal bipartisan support as well as bipartisan opposition to the president, is, of course, the situation in the Middle East with ISIS, the airstrikes that have put into play. A lot of folks say it's delusional for the president to leave the option off the table regarding boots on the ground. How do you approach that particular issue within Congress? Because it likely will still be lingering into next year. So, Stuart Mills, what about your position on ISIS?
Well, first of all, we've gone from bad to worse in the Middle East, and we have to understand where we've come from. What we did is we very well could have gotten a status of forces agreement. Our inability, or more exactly, our unwillingness to get a status of forces agreement created a vacuum. And into that vacuum was filled with bad people doing bad things. Al-Qaeda is not on the run. They have not been decimated. They haven't been destroyed. Mm-hmm. What has happened is we've given them a country, and now we have to deal with our mistakes of the past in the here and now. And certainly airstrikes are a very good first start, but we have to get Turkey literally off the border and into the game. We have to make sure that we're fully supporting the Kurdish Peshmerga. They're in a fight literally for their lives, their very existence. We have to make sure we give them the weapons and the training they need. And also the Iraqi army. They need to stand up. We have to help them stand up now because ISIS is directly threatening Abu Ghraib and the Baghdad airport. Mm-hmm. So, no, our back's up against the wall, and if we need special forces to do logistics and training and intelligence and to make sure that those various groups can be successful on the ground, you know what, then we need to do that. But the time has passed for us to have large scale. We're talking tens of thousands of troops on the ground as an occupying force.
I'll end with this, Stuart Mills. Obviously, you are a big advocate of the Second Amendment. You've made no secret of that. And I have to give you credit where credit is due. You were rather prescient on this, talking about how Rick Nolan, when it comes closer to the election time, will put on the orange vest and carry around the rifle and tout his support for gun rights. And then we see a picture released a few weeks ago of Rick Nolan holding a high-profile weapon with his finger on the trigger, not aiming toward the target. Stuart Mills, I'm the furthest thing from a gunny here, but I think even I know that that's poor etiquette. And did you kind of laugh or cry when you saw that particular photo?
I laughed and I shook my head because this is a guy that wanted to ban smaller framed handguns. Mm-hmm. The first time he was in Congress, he also voted for a national gun registry, and then he wanted to ban semi-automatic rifles based on cosmetic characteristics, the ones he thinks that look scary, and to have the government tell us how many bullets we can have in our gun. And so, we've been documenting this forever. Matter of fact, NolanRecord.com. The website is NolanRecord.com. It tells the full story of how he earned his failing grade from the National Rifle Association. And you know what? Rick can't have it both ways. He can't be F-rated by the NRA and then pretend to be all for our gun rights. You know what? There's a lot of conservative Democrats out there that just aren't buying it anymore because they know the truth.
Well, especially, the 8th is a pretty dynamic district, but some of the very rural areas that cover the 8th congressional district, I don't see how he could effectively play both sides of that particular issue. Once again, Stuart Mills, our guest, Republican candidate in the 8th congressional district. Stuart, thank you so much for joining the program today. Best of luck to you over these next 3+ weeks in hopefully carrying this back to victory and keeping the 8th in Republican hands for a long, long time. Appreciate the time today, sir.
We'll do that, Brad. Thank you.
AM